right, everybody. Here we go. Welcome. I believe that this is working sufficiently. People can see and hear me wherever you are in the world. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, I guess. Welcome to the first episode of the live TV segment of the International Summer School for Artificial Intelligence in Games, because that was a name that was already long enough. We figured we'd stick a couple of extra letters on the end of it. Welcome, first and foremost. I'm Thompson, and I'm your host for the Summer School TV for this week. A little introduction of myself. I am a game AI programmer, consultant and researcher. I also work currently as a lecturer at King's College University in London. Most people will actually know my voice rather than my face, which is a very weird sentence to say out loud, and it doesn't get any easier, regardless of how many times I say it, given that I am the voice of the AI in Games YouTube series. And so, particularly when the summer school was coming together, they said, look, we really need someone to come out and make a bit of a fool of themselves live on the internet as sort of a fun social element of this whole experience. And we thought, well, you are the premier character for doing exactly that sort of thing. Apparently my audio is a little warbly, so I'm being told. Voice is very choppy. Okay, hang on, we're going to try and figure our way out of this. Let's jump straight over we're going to go straight in, and I'm actually going to do something a little bit unprecedented. We're going to jump to our other camera. And first things first, we're actually going to introduce my co-host, Enrica Loria. So,
hello everyone.
Hopefully the voice is breaking a little. Hopefully the voices are a little bit improved. Let's just find out live on the connection. This was actually a tech thing that we managed to fix on the day, but it seems like it was a little bit garbled live. Let us know in the chat whether the voice has improved at all. Sounds like we're still a little bit garbly. Also forget we're actually... the sound is good now. Excellent. Enrica, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing good, yeah.
This was completely unplanned.
Yep.
Cool.
I mean, what can go wrong, right?
And I know, exactly. Like we actually tech tested this to make sure that warble didn't happen. We actually did a tech check at the end of last week, and the warble did happen. And then subsequently it's happened live on the night. So yeah. Fantastic. So anyway, let's get right down to this. I'm Tommy. Hopefully we've covered that already. But the idea of the Summer School TV is that because the Summer School has, as you know, for all of you who've been attending the Summer School today, that this is typically an on-site event. It's moved to online. We lack that social connectivity. And, these are the really powerful things that drive events like this. We get to meet people who are speaking at the event. We get to meet some of the other attendees. And this can have a really huge impact on your own personal work. It can also, you can start working together on projects. And also you can just build more of an understanding of the community and who's actually involved in this space. So, this is sort of our 1 hour informal show where we bring in speakers from throughout the week. And also we're going to have some attendees from the school as well. And it's just to get to know all of you a little bit more and see what we can do to enrich the experience for you all a little bit. And so, yeah, originally the idea was I was going to give that spiel on the other camera, and then I would get to introduce my wonderful co-host, Enrica, who's going to be with me throughout the week. How have you been today so far? Have you been checking out how have you been enjoying the event, I guess, thus far?
Yeah, definitely. All great talks. And I saw the audience that was very engaging with the speakers, even though, as you said, it's like remote event, so not great for social connection, but yeah. I think so far it's going great.
Yeah, it was interesting. I've been kind of having all the chats on my other monitor and just watching particularly some of the questioning, like the Q&A bit, or even just during the amount of engagement in the chat has been really great and very exciting to see. So we're actually, I think the key thing is we should first of all take a moment to introduce yourself as well, Enrica, because we met, funnily enough, doing a very similar thing last year. We did a live stream event for the Foundation of Digital Games conference, which was called FDG TV. We just kicked the TV name around from one event to another, and that's pretty much it. And as I recall, you were actually wrapping up your PhD, but big things have happened for you since.
Yeah, that's right. So at that time, I was in the thesis writing phase, so like the most exciting phase of your PhD, of course. And so yeah, that's finished. Luckily, I got my PhD back in April, remotely, of course. So
Congratulations.
thanks. So yeah, as I was saying, it was remotely. So yeah, not great, but it was fine. It was good. Yeah.
Like, how does that work out? I guess, particularly like because you're going through this. I can't imagine. I realize I'm a little old now. So I think last week was 11 years to the day that I'd passed my PhD Viva. And so I can imagine that's not been a fun experience to try and go through, particularly entirely in an online space. Trying to finish your thesis, trying to engage with your supervisor, trying to get ready for the defense, and then sitting the defense itself virtually as well. That I was quite sick to my stomach, I think, actually during my Viva in a physical room. What was it like doing it in a virtual setting?
Uh, I mean, I don't know. I got used with the conferences to do like the talks online. So I guess that uh, in terms of being anxious and like being sick and all of that, it would have been worse in person. So actually seeing all of the people, so you can just fake it and think that you're doing your rehearsal, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it was a pity because my committee was very nice, and it would have been nice to be actually in the same room and finishing up all of that in person. But yeah, everything was great. So
So
I'm
for
happy
the
anyhow.
for the audience in particular who aren't familiar with your work, like what was your
Yeah.
PhD about? Like what's your research interests in the field that you've been studying in for the last few years?
Yeah, so my research line has evolved a little bit, but my PhD was in adaptive gamification in general. So I worked on an adaptive gamification framework, and I'm into game analytics. So I looked at both individual player behaviors, but also social player behaviors. And now that's where I'm deepening and going, and basically what my postdoc will be about: social network analysis in games, in social influencers, and isolation in games, things like that, with a computer science perspective, because my background is computer science.
Of course, and so far, like I think that's going to be quite relevant as well. I think looking at a lot of the work that's happening, particularly in the later half of the summer school as well, like a real focus on data that you can accrue from players and what you can actually garner from that, and what we can learn about these experiences.
Yeah.
Speaking of the school itself, like you actually attended the first summer school, which was a few years ago now. Like, what was your big takeaway from that? Particularly, like you say, like you were during your PhD at a time
Yeah.
when you attended this, like. What was the thing that you really took away from that? What was the thing you enjoyed the most?
At that time, I actually was just starting my PhD.
Oh wow.
So yeah, it was like super new for me. It was the first experience like connecting with people in the field. And I actually didn't know what I was doing back then.
No
Not
one
that I
does. No
know
one does.
much more now, but anyway. So yeah, it was a very, very, very nice experience, especially even though you don't have like a strong AI background. Then that's what I liked about the school, that it builds it up through the days. So you start with things that like almost everybody can understand, and then you can dig deeper. So that was it. That was great.
I guess on that note, do you have any like advice, I guess, for our current attendees at the summer school, like suggestions for the jam as well, like how to kind of maximize your enjoyment as well as actually like gaining something valuable for your career like during the week?
Yeah. So for as far as it concerns for the jam, not to put pressure on everybody, but before you start, the better. So and it's a great experience to get to know people, since I mean you cannot do that much here. So it's still cool to have something to do together. In terms of the talks, well, just like have a pads or whatever and like take notes. That would be very helpful, and there are a lot of useful resources. But that's the advantage of holding that online, because we can share that also on the Discord. So that helps.
There we go, everyone. Take note. Write stuff down. And speaking of the program today, it was quite an interesting schedule that we had. And just kind of give a very brief overview. We had our introduction to the summer school, of course, from the Godfathers, Yorgos and Julian. As well as, because this is our segment that was on AI for gameplay, and so Julian Tegelius gave his AI that plays theory talk. That was it's interesting because you say there that like this was like Hanya was your first summer school. I'm old enough that I remember when most of the research he was talking about got published because I was in the room. And so I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, this was like 15 years ago or something. I'm like, oh, don't say that. Oh God. Oh no. Because I was a PhD student, I think, when a lot of that was happening. We subsequently had Tom Shaw from DeepMind came in and gave a talk, particularly about deep reinforcement learning in games, and also did a deep dive on AlphaStar. And we also had Dugu Jakmak from Creative Assembly, as well as Vincent Pierre Bergès from Unity, and we'll actually be able to chat to both of those lovely people pretty soon. But one of the other things that we're doing is we've actually got some extra guests that we've brought in just to allow us to get an opportunity to meet some more people from in and around the summer school. So in order to facilitate this, I'm going to do something a little crazy because I think I've actually managed to do some corrective surgery to this live stream while we've been here. So there we go. Look at that. Let me know if the audio is still warbling at this point. We'll be interested to see where this goes. I'm going to keep an eye on this live chat right now just to see what everyone is thinking. And yes, it managed to successfully move from one camera to another to try and mitigate against the problems that we were having. So yeah, looks like there we go. Julian also says that I did mention some stuff that happened after my PhD. Well, your PhD and my PhD were right around the same time as each other. So yeah, that was really interesting. So yes, audio quality is good, fantastic. And without further ado, I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to introduce our first guest of the evening, who is Hema Pareño Piqueras, who is one of the actual attendees of the summer school this year. Hema, welcome.
Hello.
How's
Hello,
things
Emma.
today? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
All right, I think. Technical situation largely resolved. Fingers crossed. So for our audience, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I hold a master's degree in architecture, but like from a few years ago, I had my own video game startup, did a project for PlayStation. Then after that, I had like some indie games, had like experience at Google Brain for Stadia, and now I'm doing my own indie game. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So what kind of games are you doing now?
So I'm doing like kind of like a text puzzle game in which like it's like kind of like a conversation in between like a human and an agent, but it has like kind of like a twist and going out from like kind of like this text-based chatbot thing, and it goes like with drawings and kind of like graphs, conversation-based thing. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, how did you get interested in, like, I guess, natural language processing in games, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm interested like in sequence models in general. Language is like kind of like one of the examples. From the game perspective, I like narrative games, been playing them for a while. So I also like, good conversations. So I guess like sequence models and good conversations are kind of like drivers to get me there. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, and I was wondering, do you think that through AI and natural language processing, we can, I don't know, assist players and accompanying them in a journey for well-being, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
things like that are like a very pressing issues, especially with the current times?
Okay, so I'm taking like your definition of like true AI as like an AI that could pass the Turing test, which like I don't think we are like there yet. Having said that, I think like, yeah, I mean, language models that are considered like true AI or general AI could assist in many applications.
Mm-hmm.
mental health in the end are kind of like inside the serious games, kind of like a benchmark. So we could talk about like education, mental health issues. However, I don't know if like that would like be like a therapist, so for more like kind of like assist on that.
Okay. So basically, we're not there yet. They're not like advanced enough to do something like that.
I think there is like some interesting research that could lead us like to have like some kind of like introspective experience that could like be helpful for that. Having said that, I think we are not yet in terms of like a mental health solution.
Yeah, I see. That's like a super complex topic, like in general. So yeah.
Like we're sort of,
Definitely.
bridging between this kind of experiential play, which is actually aimed to actually facilitate and help the player and actually allow them to, maybe process very real emotions, and then trying to turn that into a gameplay experience. Like that terrifies me on one level, because there's a huge kind of moral responsibility, I think, in that, from one perspective, even just at a design level. Like, I guess this is also somewhat influenced like your some of your own work in kind of interacting with language. Like, how does that affect your perspective, I guess, when it comes to game design? Because it's something that for me is actually quite alien.
Yeah, I mean, Julian said today, and there's like this idea they also explore kind of like in the book about like making games for winning and making games for fun. So if we go one step kind of like backwards, and we think about like the winning state as like a feeling of advancement or progress, we can take that like high level idea to design kind of like experiments and kind of like think of research and design direction to do that. To be honest, I think there are like some safety and alignment issues to tackle with this. Therefore, that's why like controlling the large language models in this case might be key. Also working with restricted dialogue, kind of like restricted dialogue design to actually making it like kind of like better and control. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it's like hard and requires like a responsibility, it's kind of like, for me, it's like kind of like a challenge that I feel inspired by. So yeah.
Better qualified than myself, I think, certainly. So I guess I'm afraid we'll have to start looking to wrap up in a second. But one last thing I would definitely love to ask you is, like, what are you looking forward to in the coming days? Is there like particular talks, or is it the game jam? Like, what's the thing that you're looking forward to for the rest of the week?
Well, I hope like I have the expectations to get like kind of like state of the art methods and learning about that. I think like today we have like a bunch of that. I'm also like kind of like grateful for all the responses to other attendees. I think there's very talented people here, so that's great. So yeah, I mean, both the game jam, learning with people, and learning from the talks.
Awesome. Well, Yema, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the rest of your week. And I'm sure everyone will be keen to chat with you over in the Discord server or Twitter or wherever else that they can find you. But thank you once again for joining us. I hope you have a great remainder of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Okay, going to transition back to the single camera. And so I hope you've enjoyed that. And I'm just making sure our top production team, as you know, it's not just myself and Enrica. There's a lot of buttons to be pushed whenever we run one of these events. And the good David Melhart, as well as Antonius Leapis, are in the background, just making sure that I'm not making an absolute disaster of this. Bearing in mind, of course, that the bosses are watching. So if I make a mistake, then you're going to know all about it. So, without further ado, let's get invite over our second guest of the evening, another one of the attendees here at the summer school. Please welcome Ivan Bravi. Ivan,
hi everybody.
Hello, sir. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm all right. We're spinning through this first episode, so already I'm feeling better. There's always, I think we already had, I think Enrica and I already had our first episode nerves 10 minutes before we went live. Is this gonna work? And then immediately we have tech problems. So Ivan, please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah. So let's start from where I come from, I guess. So I am basically a computer engineer, and I love games. I love AI, and so I guess that brought me to doing research on game AI. And so until a few months ago, I was a PhD student at the Queen Mary University of London. But around 3 months ago, I started my internship at Model AI. So that's pretty much what it brings me here.
Fantastic. And how's that going so far? I mean, I'm conscious of the Model AI sign on the corner of this street here.
It's going great. It's really amazing being part of this company. There is a lot of going on. So many new technologies being developed and new approaches, especially new approaches to AI that maybe come from the world of research, but finally into some more production-oriented style and application. For the industry, which is very fascinating. When you're doing research, you have this feeling of who knows if this will ever be seen by anybody, and if it has any kind of impact. But when you're part of the industry, it's totally different, and it's very amazing.
Cool. So you said that you finished your PhD from.
I actually just paused it. I will go back to it and probably finish somewhere around the beginning of. Well, you never know. PhDs are just crazy. But yeah, I will finish next year basically.
Cool. Okay, so how's the summer school for you so far? I think you have already attended one, right?
Yeah, exactly. To the first one in Hanya. It was amazing back then, and it's even better now. Of course, it's a pity that we cannot be all together in the same place. But the lectures are really amazing, and you in a sense you don't really you don't miss too much that more social side of it, because having a Discord channel where everybody can talk to each other is really handy, and it's great. It's really great. You still feel that kind of social environment around you. So it's not a passive following lectures style thing.
I think you might sleep better. You might sleep better as well. Certainly, I think one of my problems is you end up engaging in a lot more of the social activities around these events.
That is true.
Yeah, certainly. I think the last time I was in Hanya, yeah, I'm not going to say anything, but certainly our production team already knows that I almost missed flights at one point as a result of our social engagements.
I've heard stories.
No, but yeah. So you've worked on a number of game playing AI projects, and for you, what was the most fun, I guess, in terms of either the game test bed or the algorithm that you were employing? What was the thing that really attracted you, or the thing you enjoyed the most, I guess?
Before starting my PhD, it was the time of AlphaGo, and I had this sort of feeling that this is done. There is a giant company that is going to take over all research about game AI, and it's going to be awful. But in fact, it is not true, because games are not necessarily just about winning. And so my main interest is about basically searching, exploring, and discovering behaviors in games. And so what I try to do with my research is basically making AI more proficient in searching these spaces that they basically require different techniques than just performance oriented AI because they need to exploit different sides of games, because they really need to find maybe like all the possible, tracks, even the ones that are not like necessarily interesting for winning a game, but they are very useful both for game developers, maybe to discover bugs, but also to discover possible flows in the mechanics. Like there is maybe like a degenerate behavior that locks the player in a specific state or whatever that may be. So more like this kind of free search of what an AI can do in a game.
I think there's still a lot of possibility, or at least I hope
Yeah.
so. Otherwise, we're all out of work.
No, there is still a lot of stuff to do.
Well, Ivan, thanks very much for joining us. We'll have to love you and leave you for now, but we'll definitely come and catch up with you later on over in the Discord server. But I hope you enjoy the rest of the week at the summer school, and we'll definitely speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Alrighty, there we go. So far, one of the things we were really excited about, particularly when we started prepping for the summer school, was we were just looking at who is actually coming to this event, and there's such a huge range of people, different expertise, different interests, and this was something we really wanted to try and capitalize on as well, given, as Ivan himself has just said, like AI is such a huge, broad subject area, and even now in the context of games, it's increasingly large. So trying to get an idea of who we're actually going to bring in, or at least just have a chat with, to get their perspectives and stuff like that was really exciting. So next up, we've actually managed to twist the arm of a couple of our speakers from today, and they've been very kind to come and join us. So please give a warm welcome to, first of all, Dugu Chakmak, who is Project Technical Director at Creative Assembly, as well as Vincent Pierre Berges, who is the Senior Machine Learning Software Engineer over at Unity. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
How are we doing? It's the end of a long day.
Yeah, that was a very good end of a long day, so doing good, thank you.
Yeah, so we thought we could bring you in to kind of talk a little bit about, because today's all been about AI for gameplay and stuff, and both of you gave very interesting talks on how to actually capitalize and utilize AI for gameplay as well, which I really enjoy both of them. I just sit at the back because I thought, right, well, I need to make sure I pay attention to all this stuff if we're going to bring you on, certainly, because also we want to make sure that our school attendees, they're getting to ask you they get to ask you the critical questions, I guess. So yeah, like we wanted to have a kind of panel of sorts with you and kind of just go through some topics that we were thinking about. Like particularly talking about kind of experience of gameplay with AI agents and that sort of thing. Like do you have any particular memorable experiences when playing a game, like a particular AI agent behaving in a certain way? I mean, you can just refer to projects that you've worked on just in case you're like, oh yeah, this game that I worked on, I really loved that. Like, what's the game that really sticks with you?
I have an anecdote where I was trying to train a behavior with reinforcement learning, and it was a very simple behavior. It was the early days, and the behavior was just you need to push a block against the wall and then jump on the block, jump on the wall, and then go on the other side. And I just wanted this simple behavior to train. And well, I don't have very good game design skills. So what happened is that the agent, the platform was kind of floating in the air, and the agent learned to kind of jump around the wall instead of doing the nice thing that I was expecting it to do, to push the block to jump on. It just jumped around the wall because I had this slight delay in the falling down. And it was kind of this him telling me, hey, your game, it sucks. Like I figured out a way to do it better. And a human playing your thing will probably find a better way as well. And so I was like, okay, no problem. So now I make it so that you're going to fall super fast. And then you didn't learn something even weirder. You learn to go against the wall and then twist in a way so that the way my code worked, the game would think the agent is on the ground and would be able to double jump against the wall. And again, showing me that I have terrible game coding skills. And it's kind of this experience of like, wow, like the just because it doesn't behave a way a human would, it's just trying to find just the solution to solve my problem. It just bypassed all of my pre-constructs about how you should play a game, and that was kind of a mind-blowing experience in the early days.
Cool. Yeah, they can be also a bit creative at times, right? So like they play in a way that you never thought they would have.
I'm having flashbacks to my
It's
PhD.
like this,
There was somebody mentioned in I think it was in Julian's talk earlier, he was talking about fitness functions for evolution and other gameplay elements. And like, this is something that I've experienced, is that you set the fitness function, you say, right, this is the reward space, this is what we want our agent to do. And the agent will find any valid solution that doesn't conform to what you want. And then you start thinking, do we constrain this, or do we try and force it to do this thing? And then you're going to remove all the expressivity or like agency of that character as well, I guess. Like, Dugu, what's for you? Have you got a memorable experience?
Yeah, I think I can give an example to one of our games during development, though not really at the point where we published. It was a little bit of a joke and fun during, I think, Warhammer 2 development. So we managed to fine-tune quite a lot in the army management. And in the end, our armies were able to calculate and be just a little bit out of the reach of the opponents and the players. But because they can, calculate really good, but the players cannot with their eyes, they always think that they can reach, but they actually can't. So when you play test, because we also do play tests, you sit down and it's like, oh, okay, it's there. And then you end up being just a little bit further, which starts annoying the players quite a lot. And yeah, in the end, I think the game director at that time keeps coming to AI team, can you please fix this? And then we were like, but this is not a bug, this is a feature. And they're like, yeah, but it just annoys the players. And we did in the end. But yeah, I think it was very memorable for our team.
Okay. And thinking about AI and playing AI, is there a game in the past year that you've been particularly impressed that you can think of?
I haven't really played too many games that
This is always the plight of
AI.
game developers. Are you playing them?
Or in general, ever, if you think of a memorable example.
Of course, there are so many good games, but Vincent, do you have an answer? I want to think a little bit.
I don't want to think about it a little bit too, because I feel like when I play a video game, paradoxically, I don't really pay too much attention to the AI. I kind of feel like I should not have to pay attention to it. If I manage to think oh, this is something really interesting they did with the AI here, it's kind of, I almost think of it as I should not have been able to notice that. It should have been just part of the smooth gameplay.
Okay, so you think that noticing it kind of disrupted the experience?
I'd say so, a little bit. Being able to tell, oh, the AI did this because of that, it can take you out of the experience of a game. So that's why we strive to have behaviors that are really, really natural. Very hard to achieve.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I was going to say, as someone who actually plays a lot of games for the purposes of then recording it on YouTube videos, I absolutely echo that sentiment. When you play a game and you don't stop to think about it, because also all my videos are about, oh, hey, here's how the inner workings of this game is, to be able to sit and play it for a few hours, and then it's oh, my brain switched off. The active part of my brain wasn't really focused on the intricacies of these systems. I was just enjoying the experience. I love when that happens, because it's increasingly rare by virtue of the work that I do. Dugu, did you come up with one? If not, we can move on and you can come back when you've got an idea.
Yes. I think moving on is a good idea.
So, I mean,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Like, I guess there's a really interesting element here of understanding gameplay systems and how amenable and accessible they are to other people. Like, one of the big challenges, I think, for gameplay AI teams, and I think both of your talks today actually tackle this in some regard, is ensuring that systems are accessible to designers. So both of you have experience of this in very different ways, I think, actually. So like, what do you have any advice for this? Like, what's the thing that really sits in the back of your head when you're building these systems and how you communicate them to that design team?
Yeah, I think I can talk about a few things here. Yeah, it's definitely super important for designers to be able to iterate, give direction, or test things very quickly, so that you know, everything is fleshed out properly. For that, I think there are like three things I can say that we are giving importance to. One is we are trying to write data-driven systems as much as possible. So basically, we define the behaviors, but then get the designers to, you know, actually define what that system is gonna go towards. Like have them put all the parameters for them, or have them craft their stuff by bringing everything together. And the second thing is we are trying to provide very advanced logging for them, because they usually design something that they really want to do. And then when that goes to the game, it's really important for us to be able to say, this happened because of that design decision, so that, you know, they actually see their design in the game in action and decide to do maybe other things if something actually is not how they imagined it to be. And I think the last thing is our tools. So tools are really important, especially for AI designers. They really need to understand the data, analyze the data, and they really need to be able to, you know, continuously see what is the AI doing, how their design is affecting that, and what the data is telling them. So we build tools for them to easily do it.
What about for yourself,
Yeah.
Vince? Because you've got the bigger challenge of not just building for a specific set of games, but for the potential for anyone to make whatever they want, I guess, within confines of the library, and Unity potentially using that as the main engine.
Yes, it is very, very hard to create these solutions that can work in many different scenarios. But I can totally echo what was said when a game designer creates a game, there needs to be there is always this trade-off between the amount of control, the amount of authoring the designer can have, and the amount of effort, the amount of work that has to be put into it. And I think there is this trade-off needs to be really, really explicit, in the sense that I think it's useful to have different levels of abstraction where you can offer to a designer, hey, here is a nice component. You can attach it to your AI, and now your AI will be able to perceive visually, like you have a camera, or you say you can perceive on a grid, you can perceive all the objects in a grid, and maybe you add rewards at these particular times. But then you want to be able to give that level of really fine-grained control, where you want to be able to give rewards when specific things happen, when you want to be able to say, I want the agent to pay attention to this specifically, and you have to feed that observation manually. So I think it is very important when proposing these tools to designers, that they have the possibility to try something quick, just see like, hey, what would be the best way to solve this game? And maybe it will show maybe some gaps in the gameplay of the game, all the way to now I want to fine tune my behavior, and I would like the agent to do this in that scenario. So I'm going to shape the reward that way, so I have this behavior. or I can offer maybe a set of demonstrations that the agent will be nudged to do things this way. And I think having this kind of multi-level control on the offering is really important. And I can agree, for what was said, like being able to provide useful information on why the agent didn't perform like it was supposed to, although that's very hard to do in reinforcement learning, because why is the agent not solving this? Could be many different reasons. Maybe he doesn't have enough information to solve the problem. Maybe he didn't try hard long enough, or maybe the reward is not is not appropriate for that task.
And what do you think is the biggest challenge that we still have to face?
There is a big challenge in, I kind of touched a little bit on that, on the why are you doing this? When the tool you're trying to use is reinforcement learning, it is really useful for very mostly useful for very reactive kind of games. But there is kind of still this this challenge of why did you do this? It's something planners can do really well. It's like, I did this because I wanted to go through that state, because that state offers me the possibility to do that later, and that's a very good state, so I went that way. With reinforcement learning, it's really more based on it looks a little bit like intuition at times, where, oh, you did this maybe because of that, but maybe it was because you it's and it's something that I really would be really great to be able to do, and I think would help a lot of designers would be able to say like, oh, that is the explanation, that is the why the agent did that. It's very hard to do.
Dugu, what do you think? What's the biggest challenge on your end? These are the big questions.
Biggest challenge in terms of?
So in terms of like for decision-making AI for gameplay, like what do you think is still a big challenge? I mean, what was interesting looking at your talk today was particularly when you were looking at the deal-making process for Total War, and essentially that you were actually reaching a point where the search space of all possible deals and their subsequent ramifications was so big that it was not practical to ship just that complete suite of solutions for the AI to make that decision on. Do you feel like that's kind of ties into maybe like a big challenge for yourself, that you're just trying to be able to get a grip of these really large problem spaces?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of our biggest challenges, I think. Definitely. And yeah, the other one is essentially the definition of fun and definition of how we're gonna make these agents to be more believable, or to be more exist in a way more natural way.
But you've got this kind of interesting threshold. I mean, certainly, playing games like, particularly games like Total War in itself, there's like an acceptable level of time for which you can have an AI character think about something, and it's an invisible line. And I think it varies from player to player, where suddenly it's like, oh, it's been thinking about this too long now. And then you go, players are quite variable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and also there are interesting different techniques actually that you can use to make that time a little bit more useful too. If you manage to, for example, because you have hundreds of opponents, right? Some of them are more important to the players than the others. So you can basically give a bit more time for them to do the decisions, whereas you do a little bit time for the others. So even though we have that invisible line, we still have some movement space on how to use it, how to use it to do better playing opponents for you. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is at the moment not a challenge that we solve, but we dance around with and try to find, a good balance. It's all a balancing act.
As always, and I imagine it's not going to get any easier with every project, because of course, like, oh, we can do so much more, the sky's now the limit, and then subsequently your expectations of what you can achieve, and yeah, it's just this kind of arms race that's going to continue to run away from you. So I had an interesting question because I wanted to raise, particularly given, Vince, with your talk, we're very much looking at Unity ML and using reinforcement learning as part of our day to day. And actually, with Dugu, a lot of your work was looking at traditional kind of search methodologies, utility AI, and such. And I think what's been really exciting to see is we've got this trend of machine learning's becoming increasingly more prevalent in AAA game development. But what's interesting is a lot of this is actually happening outside of gameplay. So you have things like quality assurance, we have animation, cheat detection, content generation, but gameplay is, I think I would argue that it's maybe moving at a slightly slower rate. Do you think that's going to change? I guess. I mean, Vince, I'll maybe ask you first what you think about that.
Yeah, I think any use of ML in games, I think, is a good thing for ML in general, right? The more the technology is used, the more confidence it builds. For AI in particular, it's I think in AAA games there is this need of kind of this explainability. Like, I want to know why the agent did this. I want to have the full control. I can't allow the agent to maybe have this one bad decision. Like, it needs to be really perfect. I think it's going to change eventually. There are some signs that a lot of AAA games are betting on reinforcement learning or some form of machine learning for behavior. But we see most of our enthusiasm coming from indie or small studios, and that is because I think the promise that RL gives you is that it can be an alternative, and sometimes a much cheaper alternative, and it can give you also very interesting behavior. So I remember this game that was using reinforcement learning to train some behavior, but it was some behavior that was about the monster. The monsters had like tentacles, and they had to use the tentacles to attack the player, to throw projectiles, to move around, to dodge. And it was kind of we can do that by hand. Like that. Yeah. That looks really cool if it worked, but we really can't do that by hand. And that's where reinforcement learning from behavior really is useful. So I think we just need scenarios in which reinforcement learning can really shine, as opposed to traditional AI. And then I'm pretty sure like AAA studio will take on the opportunity to do that too. I think it is a question of time, but I'm really optimistic that there is going to be this change where maybe it will not be reinforcement learning specifically, but using more machine learning for AI, for behavior, that I think is inevitable.
Do you agree with that, Dugu?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, that's a really good way of putting those in. Yeah, maybe I can just add one more thing though. Even though, I would really love to see machine learning in more game systems, game development, decision making, and so on. I think still in the short term, potentially at least to play or a bit bigger, not in the studios, might prioritize the other outside areas more than the gameplay stuff. And it's like a little bit of a, I think, what's the word for it? Pragmatist approach, I might say. Because when you think about the cheat detection, content generation, I don't know, QA, all those things are smaller problems maybe, or more focused. And those are the things that we still need a lot of improvements in place. So just by doing that, they might have a return, much higher return in shorter time. Whereas for the decision making or gameplay systems, we already have established things that we are using, and just replacing them with an unknown without knowing how we are going to work in the development cycles or how this is going to manifest themselves, it's a higher risk from a company perspective. So probably because of that, until things are a bit more maybe defined or proven, it might be a bit slow, or maybe I'm just a bit pessimistic. I don't know.
I mean, I think I can certainly see your perspective on it, and I mean, it's interesting, of course, because I know Creative Assembly invest a lot of time and energy into actually researching this, and certainly if you've ever watched any of my YouTube videos, I've talked about what some of the AI of Total War and some of the other projects Creative Assembly have done, because that's what everyone remembers my work for. But you know, you've covered a lot of different bases at that company and on those titles, and you've experimented with lots of different ideas, and so I can definitely understand like that notion of confidence, both in context of the project, in terms of the development team and the workflow, like whether you're ready for it just yet.
We have a question from the YouTube chat. How do you measure the fun factor in developing non-player AI? Do you want to take that?
Can you say it again, please?
Sure. How do you measure the fun factor in developing non-player AI?
How do we measure the fun factor? We don't measure the fun factor. I wish we could. Well, essentially, we don't have any functions or any methodology to do that at the moment. We have testers and we are doing tests, and that's about it, really.
Will it be something that you think it's valuable to add in the future, or are you satisfied with your current process?
Definitely, it would. I think essentially, if we manage to do that, it might get us to a much better place. It might actually make us jump, but we don't actually necessarily know how to do that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to measure fun. Like, what do you mean with that? And so probably that's what makes it even harder. Whereas with people and tester, it's easier to just talk and see where they're going and feedback maybe. Vincent, do you agree, or?
Yes, I think trying to create a function for fun is never gonna.
What is fun?
Fun is not an equation. So
a feature in the next Unity ML drop, we'll just have like the fun box. It's just like, right, put your equation in, and you're good. Oh no. I'm bound to annoy somebody on our live feed by this, but the mere notion of having a fun equation being provided somewhere in a tool set somewhere. Oh dear. But yeah, you know what? Thank you so much, Vince Dugu, for joining us. It's been really great to get your perspectives. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've tried to keep it fun and engaging, but also fully aware that sometimes we're dropping big questions and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what the answers are. What's up for yourselves? Is there any particular talks throughout the rest of the week you're excited to check out? Or are you just looking forward to having to relaxing after a day of speaking?
I am looking for all the talks, to be honest. It's like a really good crafted program and really interesting. Sorry, it's not a diplomatic answer. I honestly really enjoyed all of them, all of their names.
I'm in California right now, so I'll be constrained by the time difference. So I hope to watch the end of day talks and probably the end of the interviews.
I was going to say, you're not going to miss out on the summer school TV. You don't have an excuse, sadly. Yes, thanks very much to both of you for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful remainder to your day.
Thank you
very much for having us, and have a good evening.
All right, everybody. Hope we're all doing good. We're almost wrapped up on the end of our first summer school TV live stream. I'm going to pop back over to have Enrica back with me on the screen. How you doing? It's been a busy first episode, I think, but we've had some good guests. Oh, we're nearly there. Oh no. There's actually discussion on fun checkboxes. Yes. Solid Reactor says in the chat, just make a fun checkbox option next to the create a game button in Unity.
Are you having fun? Yes. Thank you for ruining it.
I didn't have fun. Create the game again. It's like masochism, the game. But yeah, so we're just about to wrap up for the day. Let's have a quick reminder that, of course, this is but the first of. We're doing 5 of these, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. We've got 5 days of the summer school. We have 5 summer school TVs, and tomorrow is AI for generation, which is the big focus of the summer school. So there's going to be a lot more content related to specifically procedural content generation, and like I'm actually really excited to see. There's a couple of talks here that are sort of talking about like the range of different applications you can take, and also the ways that you shouldn't, which I find quite intriguing. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all of that. Of course, for all of you watching here with us, you'll be able to tune in with us. Be sure to subscribe to the Summer School TV. I don't like saying that, but the bosses tell us we have to tell you to do it. It's on my production thing right here. It says follow the Summer School, and you're both on Twitter as well as on YouTube. And that way that you'll be subscribed, you will know when our next live stream is coming. And Enrica and I will be back with you tomorrow evening, or morning, or afternoon, I guess, really, depending on where you are. Well, with that, thank you very much for joining us. Enrica, thank you very much for being a wonderful co-host.
Thank you for having me, and see you tomorrow.
And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.